Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular battle, I'm going to be playing the Dwarves, led by the true High King, Thorgrim Grudgebearer. So you can see he's here, he's ready to party. These guys are ready to do some slaying. So we're facing off against the Beastmen, so definitely a fun matchup. Always a good excuse to bring Slayers, and of course, Master Engineer actually has found a home in this matchup a little bit. So hopefully you guys will get to see that in action, and it'll be a good time for all. So as far as my army composition goes, I've been actually mixing it up quite a bit, as opposed to my traditional Dwarf armies. And I actually really like Ironbreakers in the Beastmen matchup. And, again, you guys will see I'm going to post a few more Dwarf games over the next few days, and you'll see I've been using Ironbreakers a lot. They're just so much fun, but one thing that kind of perplexes me is the fact that they only have bronze shields. I mean, Ironbreakers are like the creme de la creme of, elite kind of tanky infantry, and still they have like lower tier shields than, a lot of, I guess, inferior infantry. But still, these guys, these ones, regular Ironbreakers, they have 68 melee defense, which is really good, but then you look at the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, these guys have 83 melee defense, so it's going to be so hard to hit them. And essentially what melee defense is it's a mitigation stat, wherein when an opponent attacks you, it's a likelihood of being able to hit that unit. So a unit with very high melee attack melee defense is going to be less likely to actually be hit. So there's a multitude of variables that go into that, the opponent's melee attack, and then once it actually gets through and, kind of wins that roll, the damage is then applied through weapon strength. But anyways, that's for another lesson. But I do have a group of regular Ironbreakers here, and then a quite elite group of Norgrimling's Ironbreakers right here. So these guys are going to be very good in the Beastmen front line, because as you can see, a lot of Beastmen units that they usually bring, like Gore Herds and, Ungors and fodder units like that, not only do they have, somewhat low melee attack, but on top of it, they don't have armor piercing. So getting through that 120 armor plus that 83 melee defense is going to take them all week. So definitely very excited for that. Aside from that, I have two more kind of standard infantry groups. I have the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, and then I have a group of Longbeards. And in conjunction with those bad boys, I do have a group of the Grumbling Guard. So these guys are just awesome. They provide that vigor aura. They do quite well against Gorbals, so that's typically what they'll use them against, or Bestigor Herds. I mean, essentially, they'll do well against any armored opponent, but even in a matchup where you don't really need armor piercing, their aura is just so good. It provides, that kind of sustainability to your army and really makes a big difference. So I actually decided to bring some missile units this game because, I figured he might bring like some Cygors or, not Cygors, hopefully not Cygors, but a Cygor and some Harpies. So I wanted to have a little bit of range pressure, and I had to make that decision as to whether or not I wanted to bring Gyrocopters and really commit, because Harpies are very good against Gyrocopters. You might not think so since they're not like heavy armor piercing infantry, but still, like, they can just swarm them, and it's very hard to micro around that. So I'm kind of changing up my strategy a little bit. So I have a group of Rangers here, and then also a Master Engineer. So these guys are, fairly sturdy on their own accord. The Rangers here, they have, let's see, it looks like, well, right now, when buffed, of course, by High King, they have 35 weapon strength, which is huge. So, and of course, the Master Engineer is quite a good melee combatant with 120 armor and pretty heavy hitting weapon strength. So they should be able to handle some Harpies, no problem. And also, guys, the High King has made a return. I haven't used him in a long time, but he is just a beast. He provides the Great Book of Grudges, so allies within 45 meters of himself will get 8 melee attack. Great stat. And then on top of that, he also has the High King buff. So your units, assuming his leadership is higher than 50, will be immune to psychology. They get 12% weapon strength, just all kinds of goodies coming from Santa Claus himself. So that's pretty much it. I have a Runesmith, and that is it for 2 Runesmiths. So I have one here and one here. So one has the full suit, one has the Rune of Wrath and Ruin. So as far as my opponent's army go, we'll go ahead and hit play because, again, there's a lot of dancing around this battle. He does have a group of the new Harpies, so these guys are definitely good skirmishers, and they're very good at kind of keeping Dwarves in check from spamming Gyrocopters, because if you bring, 2 or 3 groups of Harpies, which are, only 1,200 to 1,800 resources total for 3 groups, or 2 respectively, again, you can really shut down the Gyrocopter threat. So on top of that, he also brought a Cygor. He has a bunch of Gore Herds, which are pretty good shielded units, good fodder against the Dwarves. I'm a huge fan of these guys. I feel like they're fairly cost effective. Then to support those guys, he has the Bestigor Herds right here. He has 2 of those. He's got the Pimp My Ride golf cart going on right here. This guy's ready to party. So he's dancing it up. He's got his whip going on. And then also on top of that, he has Gorbel, of course, and he has Morgur, the Shadow Gaze. So Morgur is very strong. This guy's absolutely a force to be reckoned with. So pretty scary army, and then on top of all that, he also has chariots. So he, essentially he has, 2 chariots? So yeah, he has his Brave Shaman on a chariot over there, and then he also has these guys here. So these guys are pretty hard to deal with. I mean, if they're microed effectively, it's an absolute nightmare for the Dwarves. And, more often than not, you're just going to have your Slayers or, one of your fodder Dwarves, take a beating, which is not fun. So other than that, let's get right into the business. I believe that's both the army compositions. So we're actually going to fast forward here because there's a little bit of posturing and dancing around. What I initially wanted to do is I saw his Cygor was like in the center of the valley here. So I was like, oh, let's just get my Rangers and my Master Engineer up here on this perch, just shoot down and rain hell on him. Because I assumed he was going to commit to this front line. But, my opponent was very patient and very well played and forced me to maneuver around quite a bit. So he actually just backs up all his forces and was like, hey man, I got the Cygor, you got no real range, you got to come to me. So Unfortunately, that is the case. So you can see I postured up on this hill, and this is obviously the dream situation for the Dawi. Just posture up here. He has to run into like satchel charges and all that kind of stuff, but unfortunately that was not the case. So right now, my Rangers and my Master Engineer are going to advance and pressure the Cygor a little bit. You can see the Master Engineer and the Rangers do a pretty good job of picking off those Harpies, and you can see, what, 2 or 3 models fall just from 1 or 2 volleys there. So these guys with their, combined pressure and the Master Engineer giving them the ballistics calibration, which will greatly improve their accuracy, is really, really going to help here. So right now, they're already starting to lay into that Cygor there, which is great, because this is, a serious perpetual threat, and it's nice to even wear it down now, though I probably won't kill it. It's still a unit that I'm going to have to deal with eventually, because, he's going to pull it into melee. It has 397 weapon strength in melee with armor piercing, so this is a serious late game threat. So I really needed to deal with this, and I was very happy that I was getting even this kind of damage so quickly. And its leadership, it's already down to 50, which is great, and now it's 49, continuing to tank, but now it's going back up, unfortunately. But still, any leadership I can get on that is going to be good. Other than that, the main forces, the Ironbreakers and all the boys are kind of advancing, getting ready to absorb this Beastmen charge. And, again, he didn't want to sit and trade with me all day here because, I was going to win this, particular trade here eventually. But still, that Cygor is getting in there. It did some serious damage to my Ironbreakers, which was a huge bummer. It's such an expensive unit. That's the one thing that's really, rough, is when, the Arrow of Kurnus or Cygor or cannons or anything like that, gets in there. It's definitely not fun. So right now, they're unleashing their satchel charges. This is one of my favorite parts of this matchup, just seeing that, like, cannon or the satchel kind of barrage go off, and then I love to time the Rune of Wrath and Rune at the same time and just look at the damage. So those kind of abilities there in conjunction with one another are just so strong. And these guys also have a charge defense against all, so you don't need to charge them. You can just let them sit there and let the opponent come to you right into those charges. So like I said, these Gorherds are not going to have a good time, but unfortunately Gorbol does not care for a charge defense. He just runs in there and gets balls deep on some of those guys. It looks like he skewered one of those Ironbreakers right there. So that was definitely an unfortunate circumstance. But other than that, the battle's going pretty well. You can see the Grumbling Guard have kind of realized where the Gorbol threat is, but my opponent comes in pretty hard with those Chariots. I wasn't sure what he was going to do, and I was keeping my Slayers back here to protect the Rangers, but the Slayers are just going to make short work of these Harpies here. They're going to cut them to pieces. This is going to be really good, because again, the Harpies, low armor, in conjunction with the high damage of the Dragonback Slayers, and you can see these Harpies are already down to 22 models. They're wavering. The Rangers took pretty minimal damage, and I'm able to kind of move them away. And it kind of worked out well that I just finished off the Harpies and routed them, because at that same time he did summon the Chaos Spawn. So you can see the Slayers are going to get in there and they're going to do battle, and they will annihilate Chaos Spawn. You can see the health just tanking so rapidly because they only have 15 armor, and these guys with their high weapon damage, high strength, are going to get in there with their anti-large bonus and just cut these guys to shreds. So this is one way to deal with Morker and his nasty Chaos Spawn, and you can see the Rangers here are also providing some supporting fire, but my opponent continuing to just ride his golf cart around, just running my guys over. So definitely very well played there, and you can see this Chariot group, they did engage the Grumbling Guard, and this Master Engineer, I was just kind of keeping him shooting this thing non-stop because his heavy-duty armor-piercing missile attack is perfect against Chariots. That's one of the big reasons I like to bring the Master Engineer, just kind of park him in the back line, and even if they engage him in melee, you just use the Entrenchment ability, which provides him with defensive stats and also additional damage, and allow him to really do his thing. So you can see this is an unfortunate consequence. The Rangers are just taking a beating back here, but every time they ride through, you can see these Chariots are down to 2 models, the Slayers are whacking on them, and also this Master Engineer is taking some good pot shots at him. Though he is obstructed right now, he'll be able to get a shot here in a moment. In the front line, High King Thorgrim's kind of riding back and forth just with his weapon in the air, just kind of waving it at his boys. And these Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are holding the line pretty well, and, doing some serious damage to Gorbol, so I was very happy about that. Morker, unfortunately, is full health, but, if I want him to be fighting anyone, it's the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers. These guys will hold the line all day. They still have, 60-plus leadership despite, being at a fairly low model count. And these guys are just absolute troopers. And you can see Gorbol he's definitely just hunting High King. So I did notice this right now, and I just kind of run High King through my troops. And this is a tactic that's very good. If you're being hunted by Gorbol, simply run him through your troops and just back and forth. So at least every time when he gets you, he's going to have to, at least, sometimes he gets stuck on the troops. That time he did a pretty good job. And High King Thorgrim isn't a pushover in melee at all. He has 450 weapon strength, so he's able to lay the pimp smacking on Gorbol pretty good, despite the fact that he's armored. So right now the Slayers were able to finish off that Chaos Spawn, and they know their Lord's in danger, so they're going to come and just lay the absolute slapping on this Gorbol right here. And the High King will probably turn around in a moment, and you can see that anti-large bonus is definitely going to start kicking in here. As you can see, he takes 60 damage right there, and his health is going to continue to drop, especially as the High King aids his soldiers here. So they're getting that nice High King, plus melee attack. They're up to 58 melee attack right now, so they're definitely going to make some good contact with this guy. In Gorbol's melee defense, let's go ahead and take a look. So it's 32, which isn't bad, but again, it's definitely not enough to stand up to these guys. So they get slayed right there, the High King and his boys. You can see they take a moment to cheer before getting back to battle. And, at the end of the day, the the front line here with the Beastmen, the Gore Herds, and the Best Gore Herds kind of shattered under the weight of those Longbeards and those Ironbreakers, but still Morghur is never out of the picture. He's summoning some Chaos Spawn, but the Dwarves are pretty good against the Chaos Spawn because, again, they hit very hard with 120 weapon strength, but they do not have armor piercing. So again, the Dwarves' armor, especially Ironbreakers, these guys are like designed to hold up against these Chaos Spawn, and will do a very good job in doing so. But still, he was able to summon a second group off one of my really injured reserve groups back here. So he has one group here, he has one group here, and the fight is definitely not over yet. But thankfully, I do have the High King here, and you can see he's getting hunted by these Chaos Spawn. Thankfully for me, High King, like the rest of his Dawi brothers, are very heavily armored. So he has 120 armor here. He's holding up quite well against these Chaos Spawn, and you can see the Master Engineer is in here laying the smackdown as well. Things aren't going terribly, but still, Chaos Spawn, despite that, are going to be pretty good, and they do cause terror, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go ahead and take a look. So, is that fear or is that terror? It's kind of hard to check sometimes, but, we'll look perhaps in another game. But still, my units, even if they were to cause terror, are immune to psychology, if I'm not mistaken, or a lot of them are. Although I think that buff is only if he's above 50% leadership, is it? Let's go ahead and take a look here. So its leadership is higher than 50%, which I'm not sure. It's pretty close, but still, my units for much of the game were immune to psychology. So they laid the smacking down on those Chaos Spawn. You can see the High King coming in, stealing the glory from all his brothers here. And right now, it's basically just Morghur, and he's been basically just fighting these Ironbreakers for the past 45 minutes, which definitely is not a fun situation for him. And he's very resistant to magic damage, guys. But at the end of the day, he takes a beating, just like most people do from melee, from traditional melee attack. So High King Thorgrim won't hit him very hard as he does magic damage. But the rest of these dwarves are going to get through to him pretty well and do a darn good job in my opinion. So he does have regeneration, and he actually is weak to fire damage. So the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass and all those guys, I think there's some left in here. I'm not sure. So no, it looks like they might have got it routed off earlier. But yeah, you can see there's actually literally one Grumbling Guard left. This guy's just an absolute trooper. So he held it down back here, was just taking a break, letting his brothers finish the battle. But very well played to my opponent. It was very fun. Always a good excuse to use Ironbreakers and Slayers and all those kind of units in the Beastmen matchup. But as you guys can see, 104 kills here, 94 kills, and a lot of those were in the initial volley too, with those satchel charges. And on top of that, the Longbeards performed very well. The Ironbreakers paid for themselves, and as you guys can see, they fought to the bitter end. The one kind of group that really got run over was unfortunately the Grumbling Guard, but still they stayed and continued to provide their aura, but they were just getting ran down by this chariot all day. So that was definitely rough, but the Slayers did well, and though the Rangers and the Master Engineer didn't rack up a lot of kills, they did good in the back line. They pressured the Cygor, and they did quite well against the chariots, considering the circumstances. As far as my opponent's troops goes, the chariots did well. I'm actually not a huge fan of the Cygor anymore. I used to love it in this matchup, but I feel like it takes away so much from your army. Like, I think a group of Minotaurs, like with shields that had just gotten in the front line and just like with that heavy armor piercing, would have just done so good against my Ironbreakers and would have made a much bigger difference. But still, again, Cygors are a pretty fun pick, but that map's a little bit tricky because of all the terrain and whatnot. But in the Harpies, they underperformed a little bit. The Rangers are still pretty good melee combatants, and that kind of detriment to them was furthered by the fact that High King Thorgrim was my leader, and he was really buffing their combat stats. But very well played to my opponent, W Badger 13. I look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and I hope you guys enjoyed that Dawi Ironbreaker battle. Have an excellent night, and take care.